determined and we just don't care who we play or who we maul. Our team's gonna rule them all. We're proud and we're tough. We're not stopping till we've had enough. We're mean, we're on the prowl. Our team's gonna knock them out. Everybody's gonna scream and shout. The red and blacks are gonna make us proud. So beware of the Bears and
One of the sensations of the year was posted by North Sydney, but certainly in a way they would not have wished. The Bears' biggest battles in 1985 were fought off the field as the club struggled with internal problems. From reserve grade coach to top man at Norths in one season, Brian Norton was given the difficult task of motivating a team already out of Winfield Cup contention.
I don't like to get involved in the political side of it. As far as Mr McCaffrey, Mr Kevin Maher standing down, North Sydney's heading for a new era. Now that they've elected a coach for next year, at this early stage, we can now show a sign of direction. And that's what the players have been looking for, is direction. When I came in as stand-in coach, it still wasn't positive that North Sydney had a leader. They had no direction. And now they have got direction. Maybe we can take giant steps forward towards 1986. At the end of last season, we lost a lot of valuable players in the club, and they weren't replaced by any players with a lot of talent. We've got a lot of fine competitors in the club, and we've got also a lot of fine up-and-coming juniors that have come up into the ranks this year. But we haven't had was players with experience, and I think that's very important that North Sydney look forward to 1986 to buy players with experience.
We're still there. We'll still be there when the world ends, if you want to call it that.
Well, our long, die-hard, suffering supporters, I can promise them that they'll see a new brand of football next year in 1986.
Yeah, I came from Queensland country, a small place called Miriam Vale, very small place. I played all my junior football in Gladstone, Queensland, from under 7s right through to under 19s, and then was approached by North Sydney.
I came from a very small country town called Wallingarra, which was on the Queensland-New South Wales border. Very conservative country family, just working class. My father was a labourer for his whole life. My mother was a type of country lady that devoted her life to her husband and bringing up 4 boys. In a town like that, there was not much to do other than play sport. There was no other fun at all. You had to make your own fun. And being the youngest of 4 boys, I had 3 older bullies that used to teach me how to bit of discipline. So that was good. It was a great way to grow up. I'd hope my children had the same sort of upbringing. It was a wholesome country upbringing where you really knew the difference between need and want. You know, my parents gave me what I needed, and every now and then I got what I wanted. I think predominantly Queensland, especially early on, obviously it may have changed in the last couple of decades, but you go back even to the 60s and 50s, it was a very working class state. It probably was nowhere near as wealthy a state as New South Wales and Victoria, and didn't have as much old money. And I think it was a lot of workers up in Queensland, and that's where the strongholds of rugby league are, in the rural areas and also in the working class areas of Brisbane. And I remember watching the first State of Origin when I was 9 years old in Wallingarra, and instantaneously I thought, I identified with this. I loved it. It was so passionate. And if Queenslanders love State of Origin for this reason, and they go well for this reason. Queenslanders play State of Origin to beat New South Wales. New South Wales players play State of Origin to get picked to play for Australia.
Once I started playing in under 7s and started making a few representative sides, junior representative sides, started getting the taste of the game, and you know, you'd watch the Brisbane competition then every Sunday night, because we never got the Sydney competition on television. It was the Brisbane competition we used to watch every Sunday, and I aspired to be like back then. young Mel Meningas, the Gene Miles, the Wally Lewis. They were playing in the Brisbane competition and they were at their prime. When I first heard about North Sydney, probably when they started televising New South Wales Rugby League on the AVC in our country area. I think it might have been about 82, or that they made a semi-final, and I liked their jerseys.
My early days in rugby league were in Bundaberg, a little town where Bundaberg Rum was made famous, and that's where I played most of my serious junior football, in school football and for the Brothers Club there. And essentially that's where I kicked off and went into the Brisbane competition, where I played for Fortitude Valley, and the Valleys Club, which is a famous club in Brisbane. In 1985 I played for them.
Well, it was that phone call from Dennis, and I guess that was 85, and he rang up and said, we need you down here, do you want to have a run? So I turned up the next day. I think I got 15 or 20 minutes on the wing, and the next week I was selected on the wing. I think it was against Illawarra, and you know, from there on in, that was it. I turned up, I trained hard with them, I played the rest of the season, 85, there, and then started 86 in reserve grade.
1985, it was a case of applying for the position at North Sydney Leagues Club. North Sydney Leagues Club was the, and still is, the benefactor to the football club, but it's strictly a Leagues Club.
End of 1985, went and saw Ken McCaffrey after the end of the season, and sitting there with Ken, he said, you had a good year, didn't you? Because those days I was getting match payments, so I think it was $50 a win in under 23s if you want for the first 12 you won. I can't remember, but it was pocket money. We played for love and it was great fun. And at the end of the year he said, you had a good year, well, think you'll sign you up for next 3 years? I said, yeah, okay. I didn't, just whatever he said, yeah, that'll do. I said, just for last year, here's $1,000. He wrote out a cheque there for me on the spot for $1,000, and I thought that was the biggest windfall of my life. I thought, that's great. The
Leagues Club was not travelling too well. It had, in 85, 86, it had about 13 or 14,000 members. It was experiencing difficulty. It had one or two constraints placed on its spending and by the bank, and it had to be realigned into the culture that needed it to be. Funny enough, a successful Leagues Club in the late 80s and certainly for the 90s, and that was achieved, but it was a bit spooky.
In my playing days in Bundaberg, I played for the Brothers Club, and one of the great figures at that club was a guy called Noel Kavanagh, and that was my introduction to North Sydney. I was quite successful in my early playing days at Bundaberg, and Noel, being an ex-Bear from the late 60s, early 70s, actually put my name forward to the club. And I did not know this at the time, yet I always knew that Noel played for the Bears and had that minor interest with the Bears, although it wasn't the team that I actually followed in the Sydney competition.
I was employed as a development officer in very early 85, and spent the first 9 months doing that. And there was some problems at board level, and there was an upheaval in the board, and Ken McCaffrey, who was the then club secretary, departed the scene, and I was asked to take over as acting chief executive of the club secretary, as they were known as those days. And the first task, of course, was to look to see who was signed for 1986, and we had one player. Mark Graham was the only player that was on contract at that particular stage. So it was a fairly enormous task, and North didn't have any money. Money was very, very scarce, and so it was a fairly difficult task in putting together some players that could play first grade. And with Brian Norton's help, who was the appointed coach at the time, we got it together, and we worked a lot of long hours in putting together a side that eventually got beaten at playoff for the semis for 1986.
I was appointed as development manager with the North Sydney Football Club taking over from Bob Thorne as he moved to Chief Executive. That role in those days, there were three of us running the football club. There was Bob, myself and Pat Baker as the secretary. And so the development manager did virtually everything.
I was deputy chairman with Kevin Maher at the time, and Kevin was a good president. But he announced in the papers that he was going to stand down as president, and I thought, now I'd been deputy chairman with Kevin and with Harry McKinnon. I thought, now if I don't stand for president now, I might as well get out altogether.
Ken McCaffrey had negotiated with Martin Bella and Gavin Jones. So they were two players that were already coming to North. And so we had gained those two players. We also needed a halfback because we'd lost Mitchell Cox, so Clayton Friend from New Zealand was another player that was added, and also Olsen Filipana.
I've got to say this Chicker, and I hope I don't offend him, he wasn't the best coach I've ever had, but very good motivator. He made you feel like playing, which was probably 9/10 of it.
We went to Queensland to try to sign up Peter Jackson, the centre, for the Brisbane side at that particular time, and also Brett French. We're trying to get those players to come down to play for the North Sydney Bears. Well, we were unfortunate that we'd missed out on Peter Jackson because he was the Canberra side had picked him up, and we'd picked up Brett French. He was coming, and also a player that we didn't have any intentions of buying, but I was talking to some players in Brisbane at the particular time, and I was doing a bit of talent scouting.
My name came up again through Brian Norton. He checked the files, saw that Noel Kavanagh had recommended myself, and that created the interest again. And obviously they'd heard my name in the Brisbane competition, and it eventuated that the Bears came to me, and I signed with them in 1985 and for the 1986 and 1987 season.
The kick, high, long, straight between the uprights. First point of the match goes to North Sydney. North Sydney cheer girls. Friend, Filipina, a bumping run. It's going to be a try. Yes! Scored by Rex Wright, the hooker, after Filipina. They keep up this wrap to the left, and it's a little kick ahead by Hansen. Well, for mine, he's been the best North Sydney player by lengths. Filipina. 5 tackles gone now for the Bears. They may go for another drop goal. Cannon is wide. Friend puts the kick in. Oh, this man is coming fast, Florimo. That's a try. That's a try for Greg Florimo.
All he was doing was sitting on the reserves bench, waiting for a game in first grade. But what he was doing on the reserves bench was the thing that got him into trouble. Here he is, Freddie Teasdale, playing the yo-yo.
That's right.
And as a result, Fred got a $100 fine. But he made first grade this week.
That's right, and that didn't help either, because they got flogged this afternoon by South Sydney.
Someone's lost their sense of humour there. Oh, that's quite funny, I think. I'll fine him $100 for that. Hey?
He's playing with his yo-yo. I mean, it could have been anything.
Could have been playing with a rugby ball, couldn't he?
Mark Cannon. Mark was a great clubman, great player, and a great asset to North Sydney Bears. Yeah, Mark Cannon. So all the buys we did have were I thought were excellent.
Well, even their 3 missing State of Origin stars could have lifted them sufficiently to match it with the Bears, who kept the Tigers trialless. It's the first time in 3 years that the Bears have beaten Balmain, and the score of 16-7 probably flattered the Tigers.
Norths looked to be up to their old tricks when Peter Cross gave away a senseless penalty and was given 10 minutes in the sin bin for his trouble. And Ross Conlon from back near halfway had Balmain fans smiling for one of the few moments in the game. In the second half, it was as if Balmain had shut up shop, and Mark Graham went through a gaping hole.
Easy. Walk through them.
But Balmain's defence fell away as North's prop Martin Bella did it with ease.
It's over. He scored.
It was a fine North Sydney win, and Balmain coach Stanton looks to be already contemplating changes.
Congratulations on your win, and thanks for coming along. I've noticed you do a funny thing when you score a try. Now, you score enough tries, you always land heavily on one knee. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, after watching that, yeah.
You're going to do some damage to your knee scoring a try one of these days. I'm serious. In a match there, I can't remember the game, you ran a long way, about 60 yards at North Sydney Oval not so long ago, and you fell right on your right knee, and then your body erupted up another 2 feet in the air after. I reckon you'll do serious damage. I'd cut that out.
I'll have to get some more practice, I think, Reece.
They 43 tackles, horrendous load for the players to carry. This pass did go forward from MacArthur to Kiss, otherwise he was in for his second try. Florimo, Kiss, talking about Myler, we all know that he's an astonishingly gifted player, and there's your try. Gee, that was a nice bit of football. There's that knee again. That knee, one of these days you're going to say, I wish I'd take a notice of Rex Mossop about that knee when you have all the cartilages removed out of your right knee and all the ligaments strained and torn away from the bone. Oh, geez, you blokes won't take notice. And what about your old prop forward there? Not old, Bella from Queensland. Young, only a lad.
You've got to say 1986 was a great year for the Bears because not only myself but Gavin Jones went into representative football, Martin Bella who went in the Kangaroo Tour with myself at the end of that season. We attracted a guy called Greg Lennon who has since passed away, and that year in 1986 from rugby union.
A sizeable slice of the Codes history passed on when the Sydney Sports Ground was bulldozed to make way for the new headquarters in the spectacular shape of the Sydney Football Stadium. The old sports ground was unique insofar that it was the only arena in Sydney to run east-west, meaning that for half of the game you'd have to contend with the afternoon sun in your eyes, which often made life difficult. As tenants of a ground that hosted several grand finals, it was fitting that Eastern Suburbs emerged with victory in the Sydney Sports Ground's final assignment. Fullback Gary Worth scored 3 tries in the first 20 minutes as the Roosters held out North Sydney 21 points to 14.
It was a lovely pass. He's streaking away. Brian Johnson can't get him from behind, and it's going to be a North Sydney try when they needed one.
After a game, all the partners and players would get together and go and have a meal or a drink somewhere, and we enjoyed our football, and that's what made us a pretty good team, I felt.
In the middle of a hard, gruelling training session, he'd suddenly bring out a birthday cake for Freddie Teasdale, and everyone would sing happy birthday, and he had these types of approaches that really did make it an enjoyable place to be. And training was tough and uncompromising, but there was a purpose about what we were going to do. We wanted to go out there and be the best we can.
Well, here's the action with North Sydney. Don McKinnon there. They've got a very big pack of forwards. Gavin Jones is having a tremendous season. Clayton Friend, of course, justifiably exonerated after being sent off last week on a high but not dangerous tackle. Mark Graham's the man who can do so much, and Martin Bella's having a great season in the pack for Norths. And Gavin Jones, I think he can pretty well book a passage on that Kangaroo Tour at the end of the year. He's been one of the form players of the season. He continually breaks the line and sets the play up, and he's getting more and more skillful in the way he sets up the play. The Panthers without David Lydiard and John Cartwright today. Ken Wolfe and Gary Howell have taken their place, and Greg Alexander, despite a knee injury problem, is in the side, and as we've mentioned before, he's the man upon they depend so much for the inspiration. Matt Goodwin, after coming from West Wyalong, has had some tremendous games with the Penrith side, and when he's fired up, he crashes through and sets it up beautifully. Graham West in charge today. The Bears to kick off a magnificent day here at North Sydney Oval. So Penrith in possession on their quarter line, and that's Goodwin feeding it, setting it up to Connor. Roy Simmons at dummy half. Daryl Broman, who's slimmed down a little this year, been very fit and sharp, big contributor. Brandon Lee, rangy second rower, good kicking game he's got as well. Now the clearance from Greg Clements down to Paul Conlon, who's taken over at fullback this week. MacArthur's on the wing and Butler back in reserves. And Conlon's had plenty of first-grade experience. A couple of handling blues from Norths, Mark Graham, and then Gavin Jones. 3 times they've dropped the merchandise.
And the reason why they dropped it, Jim, is because the player took their eyes off the ball, more intent on looking at the man coming towards him. And let's face it, in these opening 12 minutes, there's been a lot of high tackles.
Alexander, look out! Here he goes, and he's in! Oh, a gap as wide as the heads. Wasn't that the easiest try you'll ever see? He's 10th of the season, organising the switches of direction. That's Green. Now watch for Alexander in the play here somewhere. There he goes. What a ball, and Howell scores! Howell scores off Alexander. A regulation move, beautifully executed, and Gary Howell swamped them under the posts. Friend, Jones. Jones not cutting loose as yet as he did last week. Graham's good ball to French. He's made a bit of a break. Kiss is now up to halfway. Norsa showed down that touchline, but isn't a touch. He's down on the sideline with Debbie's playing. Rex Wright.
Rex, last time we saw you, you were writhing around on a stretcher. What's the latest on that injury?
I've got another 4 to 6 weeks in plaster and probably another 4 or 5 weeks before I can start moving around on it again.
What's the setback for Norths has been the loss of you around the dummy half. Can you explain to the viewers what the actual significance of that dummy half role? It may look pretty basic, but it's very important.
Yeah, we've just got to set up all the play, and it may look basic to most of the viewers, but you know, there's certain moves that the hooker only knows about, and he's got to sort of control that sort of play.
So you're basically calling the shots when you were out there?
Yes, me and Clayton out in the field call most of the moves in the general play.
And that's that picturesque North Sydney ground. And there where we are on the scaffold, that new stand is going to have a number of shops opening out onto the street. And it'll be the Strand Arcade with a football field, they tell me, when it's finished, Steve-O.
It certainly looks nice, doesn't it?
Friend, a good dash. He's cut through them. Just a metre short. A nice little step from Clayton Friend. Tackle by Clements. Right on the boil. It's Cannon. He sets it up. Filipina. And he's over the line. And he's got it down. Big Olsen, with those chocolate pillars of his known as legs, has got through. He scored near the upright. And North are back in the hunt.
Certainly are, and good play. You can put this try down to Clayton Friend, that individual stuff, but a good switch back inside. The strength of the Kiwi takes him over.
Bella. And Bella rips it up. The North Sydney supporters cheering their Bears now as they start to surge forward. Graham's long ball. Florimo slipped it. Here's Kiss. Little Les Kiss, he's flying down there. He comes to Robards. Back inside it goes, and it's a try to Cannon. Mark Cannon has scored. And that was just what Mike Stevenson was talking about, getting it out wide. And Les Kiss, who's got so much pace, was able to set it up for Cannon.
It's amazing what a little bit of confidence can do for you, and a long pass from Graham. And watch this ball. That's a beautiful pass. That's good play by the young centre. And Kiss, dearie me, French was beautiful play. And this is how to back up man. And he'll thoroughly enjoy that, Mark Cannon.
The crucial point both coaches are talking about at half-time is control of the ball. Both coaches want to see more of that from their side in the second half. In the North's camp, they say they've overcome the silly mistakes of the first 20 minutes of this game. They want the forwards to continue running straight and hard as they did in the first half, towards the end of the first half, that is, move the ball out wide and create gaps. Tim Sheens also says the gaps will come wide if his team move the ball around. He wants more work from the markers. He says that was in the match plan. They're not sticking to it. And his final words was, if Norths are defending, we'll win.
Thanks, Debbie. So Norths with a slight wind assistance in this half. And Mark Graham goes forward, tackled by Connor, Simmons and Broman. That's Friend's ball. Charging ahead, Gavin Jones. You often see the linking between those two, trying to inspire a big burst from Jones. Now it's Bella back into the middle. Support from Lindsay. So a lively start in the second half for Norths, who lead 14-12. Cannon, a quick dummy and a quick kick ahead into space. Robards caught out of position. Cannon's charging after this. Robards has got it, and Cannon's got him in goal. What a start by North Sydney. Well, that's about the most enthusiastic start to a half of football we've seen from Norths for a while, and it's paid off because they'll get the ball back from a drop under the posts. Steve-O.
Great play by the lock forward. Who said that forwards don't have brains? You could see Robards well out of position. Instead of going for touch, kicked it downfield.
It's Conlon. Conlon, who's had a few good rushes from the back at the defence. Bella. That's Kiss. Look at him go. Really elusive. Howell dropped it. And Norths have got it back with a tackle recount. Lindsay. Straight ahead. Setting up position. Penrith just a little rattled at the moment. Friend. That's Jones. Jones gallops ahead. Look at French. He's in. Gavin Jones and Brett French. What a difference all these Queensland players are making. Brett French, Gavin Jones and Les Kiss, but that time it was Jones and French. North's further ahead.
Good play by the second rower. There's a big fella, the second is beautiful ball out wide. French had no intention of looking for the man. He knew he had the speed.
Les Kiss with an awkward kick on the angle. He's hit it well. The breeze is bringing it through the post for 2 points. Beautifully judged kick from Kiss. So Norths, an 8-point lead. Gary Howell. Norths charging up to make the tackles. Here's the last one. Alexander. Izzard's chasing it. Conlon's got it. He gets around Izzard. And Conlon, another strong run back. Brian Norton obviously looking for a bit more strength at the back this week. Put Conlon there and MacArthur to the wing. Mark Graham almost getting over the tackle and delivering it. He keeps it going. And Penrith inside the 5. And perhaps a chance for Kiss to have a shot at goal from this. Well, Les Kiss, he's hit it well. It's another fine kick. Look at that. 2 more points. 10 ahead now, the Bears. Penrith have won a few games from this position during the year. Alexander's been the spark. What a pass. Izzard. Izzard keeps it going. That's Howell. There's Green, and they've scored it. Well, there you are. A vital kick this could be. He's hit it beautifully. 2 more points, and the game's on again. Just 4 points between the Bears and the Panthers. 16 minutes left in the match. 22-18. No, he's played the advantage. Looked like there was going to be a scrum. Now Norths. Graham Murchie, the replacement for Clayton Friend. What a loss he's been. McKinnon. McKinnon's made a good run here. Don McKinnon. That's like the old days of running on the cricket pitch when they wouldn't tackle him here. He ran about 20 metres. Murchie wide. Cannon. Squeeze ball.
The best form of defence is attack.
Tight head. Filipina. That's Cannon standing out wide. Oh, terrible. Look at this. He's given it away. It should be a try. And Alexander cut down a metre short. There's still a chance. It's loose. It's a penalty. They're all offside. North's all offside. But what a terrible mistake by Mark Cannon out in the backs there. And Alexander, but for this last-minute tackle from French, was in. And then you'll see North's up on the blind side. They're all offside there, and it had to be a penalty. The penalty, of course, goes to Penrith. Graham gets a caution. It's desperate stakes for Penrith. Ackery charges ahead. Charge ahead, close to the line. Gerard pulled back. Alexander caught by the defence. There's the siren, it's all over. The Bears have won. The Bears have done it. What a win for the Bears. And for once this season, when Penrith have got close in the last 20 minutes, they haven't been able to produce the magic to pull the game out of the fire. But it's been a tremendous afternoon here, and North Sydney keep their slim semi-final hopes alive. Certainly they're a lot brighter after this effort. Steve-O.
Don McKinnon, very, very good indeed. And of course, man of the match, Les Kiss. His goal kicking, in the end, told the difference. 2 magnificent goals under a lot of pressure.
Mark, for second week in a row, you've held off a team fighting back in the second half. Do you think you've finally kicked that image of the team that tries hard to lose?
Well, yeah, I think so. We've got a lot of good players. Like I've been saying all along, there's only about 2 players that haven't been in a state play or represented at some level within the side. So I think we're going to go places.
Why were things so rocky in that first 20 minutes?
Oh, they seem to have all the ball. We gave away a succession of penalties and they had all the ball, and we were defending our own line. But, excuse me, I was very pleased with the way the boys went today, and they showed a lot of commitment and heart.
Penrith seemed to lose their cool a bit out there in the second half. Was that the way you saw it?
Well, you know, we lost our cool when we were up there last time. We got beaten 28-0. It was a pretty hard game, and it was very hot, so this time it was our turn.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Have to stop meeting like this.
Yeah.
Everyone got on well. Everyone, like a lot of new blokes were there, and so they had their partners, so there was no established sort of big clique that no one could feel happy and comfortable with, so everyone got on really well. So, and I think that shows if you can get on well off the field, it goes through into your football.
To combine the side together, you've got to find out where each individual player's problems are, and you've got to respect that. And once he knows that you respect what job he's got to do apart from his football, you can communicate with him. Show no communication and just want all the attention and respect yourself, you're not going to get any respect from those players.
Well, Brian Norton as coach, he really gave me my first break. He was my first coach. I remember the night he called out the team and I was selected. We were down at Tunks Park training, and you know, that was a great moment again. And I thought, wow, I'm really going to give this a shot.
Checker brought him up as a youngster, and I can remember playing the Bulldogs at Belmore. And it was always a pretty hard clash with us because they liked coming straight at you and we liked going straight at them, so it was, there wasn't a lot of science involved, and it was the best team standing at the death. And just before we went out into the football field, I saw him put on a skull cap, which are pretty common nowadays, admittedly, and I went over and said, listen mate, we don't wear any of that sort of stuff here, and you know, we don't like that, because we'd just say if someone else was wearing one of them, we'd be targeting. And he said, oh, I've got his goal, and took it off, and I think he was only 17 or 18 at that stage, and a good North Sydney young man. And Chicky came over and said, mate, what have you said to him about that? And I said, oh mate, I just told him we didn't like that sort of thing, the skull cap. He said he fell off his skateboard yesterday and he's got 16 stitches in his head. So I went over and said, mate, it's all right, you can put that back on.
We found out later that he had headgear on because he'd fallen off his skateboard and cut himself. So that sort of heralded a pretty good patch for North Sydney with the birth of this kid called Florimo. We played the North Sydney Oval. We beat them fairly convincingly, but this kid showed some potential. And I've got to say, you don't often remember players at a young age, but I remember him.
Teasdale to give to Murchie and then to Bella. Beautiful tackle by Mosley. Cannon's the dummy half.
Up and at him goes Gavin Jones. Good run by the big State of Origin player. 5 tackles gone for the Red and Blacks. Cannon puts the kick up. Murchie's going to prove menacing. Oh, it's been put down by Casado. It's a try. It's a try for the Bears. I believe Murchie. It may have been Cannon, but I'll certainly have a look at it with you on the replay. I believe it was the little halfback, as we see the congratulations go round. Casado couldn't hold it. And then the little number 7 gets his hands to it.
It'll split very easily. It's gone across now to Sterling. Then on, oh, Price. Well, Jones got a hip on Price, and that hurt the Parramatta lock. 5 gone. Here's the hit again. It's just simply a shoulder and hip charge on Price.
Played back to Ray Price. Casato. Price is still not 100% as I watch him retire back to the blind. It goes to Sterling, then to Kenny. There's... Oh, Bugden! Heavens above, Gavin Jones has hit him. He's hit him with another hip and shoulder charge, similar to the one on Price. And now Mosley can't handle. Kenny's inside the 32. Casato's going for the corner. He's pulled down 6 metres out. The siren sounds. It's all over. The Bears have won.
The Bears led 12-8 at half-time and ran in 3 tries to Cronulla's 1. A Nigel Tate try midway through the second half assured Norths of victory and a playoff against Balmain on Tuesday night. As for the Sharks, they'll be hoping that they can avoid the league's axe and still be a part of the premiership in 1987.
Norths then started to become a force again in the premiership. And it got up to the last game where Norths had won their last 3 and we had to play Balmain for a playoff to see which side, because we'll both equal fifths. We'll both finished equal 5th. And we played off that night at the Sydney Cricket Ground, and unfortunately Norths went into that game with a lot of injury. We had Mark Graham on the sideline, Alson Filipana, Clayton Friend, Gavin Jones, all the players that we needed. They had been on the paddock, we certainly would have won that game and gone on to bigger things that particular year.
An early ball then to give Conlon the opportunity to put Davidson away.
This is David Brooks now. Bumbiggie's way over. 22-metre line. Davidson. Yes, it's a try. Scored by John Davidson in front of the M.A. Noble corner.
Could be some problems there with the neck area of John MacArthur. They win the scrum. The fullback comes in, Conlon, but again they're running across the ground, North Sydney. Here's Cannon now, wrapping it around the same way, but they're outnumbered out there.
Well, what's happening? The Balmain defence is moving up very quickly out in the centres, and Mark Cannon's the man for North that's got to find some answers. He's been shut out. He's outside man. He can't get the ball to them. He's got to find some variety in his play. Now, you can beat that sort of tactic in defence if you've got the right tactics in attack. He can bring a man short off the outside. He can show an inside pass, or he can kick in behind the defensive line as it comes up quick.
So it's away now to MacArthur. That was knocked backwards, and Casey comes up with the ball, playing in the number 3 jumper, gets at the 22. MacArthur! He's going to score! Yes, MacArthur scores for North Sydney! The Bears have gone in with the equaliser, and most definitely they will convert from right in front. Johnny MacArthur. And Paul Conlon will take the attempt at conversion. 15 metres out. And this is just what Balmain didn't need. They didn't need to let North Sydney put their nose in front, because the Bears, well, they love wheeling and dealing. There's the conversion. North Sydney lead in the playoff by 6-4. And here's a good chance for the Tigers. Won by Balmain, away to Bridge and on to Conlon. Conlon cuts out Scope, but Gary Jack has put himself into a hole, but what a great tackle by Conlon. The ball goes to the blind. Bridge turns it inside for Conlon to come back to the open. Back to Gary Jack. Gary Jack is a metre from the line. The Tigers throwing it on now, trailing 6-4. Gale, Schofield, intercepted by Conlon, but he's offside. 5 tackles gone for Balmain as the ball is kicked by Gale, but that's an ordinary kick, and Les Kiss comes back outside the 22. Pile on the pace, Les.
Oh, he's got space
here. He comes outside the 32. He goes away from Serenum. He's over the 40. He's over the half. He's gone 15 metres down into Balmain's territory. Les Kiss brings the North Sydney fans to their feet. Now they spin it wide. MacArthur's turned inside. Finds Casey now. Casey tackled by Hardwick. Play back to Kiss. Richard Smith. McKinnon. Teasels the dummy half. Smith again. Kiss. Away from 2. Got the ball away for Teasdale. Teasdale tackled just outside the 22 line.
And only 35 seconds of the first half remaining. They'll probably go for the air. It's a drop goal attempt by Cannon. It doesn't look bad. It's a goal. It's a drop goal for Mark Cannon. The centre, Casey, is having a finger that jumped out. He's the trainer and he are going through a fair bit of agony. Matter of fact, I think the trainer's in more pain than Casey. Ooh. Anyway, I shouldn't laugh, but it's a common injury that footballers suffer. Played back to Schofield, away now for Gale to Hardwick. Hardwick gets under Jones and he goes to the 22 line. And Jones is hurt. He's hurt that right forearm as Elias stands in a tackle. The ball to Gale, then to Bevan. Bevan's to the 10-metre line.
They're gone here, North. I don't think they can hang on.
They're 10 metres out. It's gone from Scott Gale back into Kevin Hardwick, and Hardwick is held by Conlon for one and by Kiss for another. Away for Benny Elias. He puts the drop goal over. Yes, it's a goal for Benny Elias. 7-0 between the Tigers and the Bears at the SCG. The drop goal by Benny Elias on the NEC replay. 7-7. What would that pay on footy tap? Well, Gavin Jones has done his right arm.
We had one little bloke called Scotty Gale just cut us apart there in just a couple of goes, and that was the end of that section. And then he ended up coming to the club here.
Now with Scott Gale, he puts the little kick over. Lee Gathers, here's Gale, he kicks again. Gale, he's chasing hard. I think he'll do it. He did. Scott Gale scores a sensational try.
I remember hearing about North Sydney, I think it was 1986. I remember at my friend's place when they got beaten by Balmain in a playoff for 5th spot in semi-final. Gavin Jones broke his arm, Scotty Gale had a good game, but they obviously missed the semi-finals. Just it might have been at the Sydney Football Stadium, or Sydney Cricket Ground. That's when I first heard of North Sydney, and also one of the great players, the players that I grew up admiring, Mark Graham. Obviously followed his career intensely, and I used to have a soft spot for Olsen Filipina. He was an amazing athlete because he's the only player I ever saw play at the top of Wally Lewis. No one else did it, and the fact that he could come out of reserve grade, he was playing first grade at North, reserve grade at Balmain, could come out and play at the top of Wally Lewis. He was an interesting character as well.
You know, I have fond memories of '86. It was a good season for me. I scored a lot of tries. I played with some great players in the reserve grade finals. I mean, Olsen Filipina was there. I formed a good combination with Andrew Simons. I was playing centre at the time, and some unknown players as well. But together we formed a good side, and I think Dennis Constantine was duly the cause of that. He had a great philosophy on coaching, and he brought the best out in the team, and we really wanted to play for him. It was unfortunate we got knocked out. I thought we could have gone a little bit further, but you know, it was a nice taster for me, and it was a good opener, and you know, it stood me in good stead for the years to come.
But as it was going on into the season, I started thinking about, well, if I prove myself here that I can get North Sydney to at least to the grand final or into the finals, that I'll earn my position. So there's a first grade coach for next year, and so I worked hard at it, and then I fronted the board halfway through the season, and I did ask them about next year, and there was not, that I was virtually told just to worry about what I'm doing now, and that we'd talk about that later at the end of the year, and so that's what I did. But as we all know, that North's had signed, at that particular time, was rated the best coach in the world, was Frank Stanton. And Frank was, at that particular time, coaching Balmain, and North Sydney had signed Frank Stanton to come over because they'd looked at the opportunity in a lifetime is to get probably someone who was coached at his level, a very high level, because he took the Australian side to, which they called the Invincibles, to coach. But, however, there was one thing that I feel that they had did this a lot earlier in the season and hadn't told me, weren't fair with me. And I must say this, that on the night that we played Balmain, because I feel if we had won that game, there would have been no doubt North Sydney would have went on to challenge for that premiership that particular year, because the players that we had sitting on the sideline that are out injured, unable to play for that particular game, would have been better would have been able to the following week, and our strength and our backup would have been great, but it just wasn't meant to be on that particular night.
Well, at the end of 1986, having been at Balmain for 6 years, it was time for me to take a break away from that club, and when that was announced, I was offered to come and discuss the position at North Sydney, and I really wasn't planning to coach when I'd finished at Balmain. I was planning to have a bit of a spell, but the offer came, and so I went down and discussed it, and ended up was offered the job, so I decided to take it. It was a 3-year deal, and I quite was looking forward to it, actually.
I felt hurt. There was a lot of hurt. There was a lot of hurt everywhere. There was hurt in my home. There was hurt everywhere. But see, it's a business, and you know, once again, as I come back, football teaches you a lot. Team game teaches a lot. You might get hurt, but you got to get back up again, and you don't sit around and whinge and everything like that. And I look at the club. I've always looked at my club, North Sydney, and say, right, I know what I think of my club, but what do they think of me? And I always worry about that. What do they think of me? It's all right what I think of it. I might think about the club this way or that way, but what do they think of me? And I thought at that particular time they mustn't think very much of me. To be doing this, to take that particular thing, that goal away, and once again it comes back down to the reason that North Sydney has failed is because of stability. And I do feel, honestly feel, that North Sydney had left me in that position at that particular time, I would have taken North on the following year to be very, very competitive in the next 2 to 3 years that we had, that I would have had if they'd given me the opportunity of 3 years. But however, that's the past now, that's gone. And as I say before, I always think of what does the club think of me, not only what I think of the club, and it's a great club, and that was just a passing through.
'86 was a Kangaroo year, and when you talk about Kangaroo years, you expect the teams, the dominant teams, to actually dominate the number of players in those teams. And the North Sydney Bears, you probably never thought many would come from that team in that year. Yet 1986, we took the Bears provided 2 players, myself and Martin Bella, to the '86 Kangaroo Tour, and I've got to say it was for me one of the greatest achievements that I've been able to achieve. When you come from Queensland country, where I came from, and to have a dream and to go forward and achieve it within a short period of time, you know, it gave me a very, very good feeling. You know, you're satisfied that you set some goals and you go and achieve them. Yet you don't achieve them without on your own. You know, it's a team sport, and as I said earlier, Brian Norton created the team that wanted to go places, wanted to have fun, enjoy the journey, and that was a great catalyst for myself, Martin Bella, to play the type of football we did. That made us be recognised by the selectors. It still ranks as with one of the greatest experiences I've ever had, although the other extreme of that was one of the probably most traumatic periods I've had. I played 4 games on tour, played 1 test, and on a cold night at Widnes, I snapped my knee, cruciate ligament.
I announced that I would go on a different tact being a little bit selfish about the team that I play with, when you consider the young people that come to the club with the George Martins, the Horries and the Peter O'Briens and the Jim Gillans and the Bens and the Dons, that I would try to rebuild the team a bit that way again.
Bob Sullivan wanted a youth program put in place. Obviously our junior strength, although it was reasonable, it wasn't outstanding. So we had to go and look elsewhere. And so we put this youth development program in place where we looked at everywhere for players, and we were very fortunate. We found Gary Larson, David Fairley, Billy Moore, Jason Martin, a great young halfback we got, Mark Soden, Adrian Toole came up through our juniors, Craig Wilson, Chris Carawan, I've already mentioned, Noel Solomon. You know, the list is probably endless. And that was one of the really enjoyable parts in those days, because the money wasn't the end all of everything. When I signed Billy Moore as a young 17-year-old player, I got him for $1,000 less than what Parramatta offered. And I got him mainly because of the fact that he'd stayed at my place, his mum had stayed at my place, and she felt comfortable with us and she felt comfortable with the club. And in those days it was a real good atmosphere to be involved in. The money wasn't the pressing point, and players came to the club because they felt comfortable there and they felt they could go on and do things.
In 1986 I was playing in a senior competition, it was called the Northern Districts competition, around just north of Bundaberg. And Noel Kavanagh approached my father. At the time I was only about 18, and asked me if I wanted to go to North Sydney Football Club. And our eyes lit up, and I said, yeah, let's do this, let's go.
I was going to the gym a lot, and I was with Gary Larson in the gym, who was this gentle, shy, quiet Viking from North Queensland, amazing bloke. And then you'd see him on the field in the State of Origins, and you'd think, how can that be that same quiet giant? And you think, look, it doesn't matter if they're not winning. There are a lot of people in this club that are stars, who are really committed. That was enough.
You know, when a new coach takes over, it takes a little while to establish the style that you want people to play. And unlike today, you know, we were semi-professional. You only trained a couple of times a week, not like they do today full time. So it takes a little time for you to implant your style on or a coach to implant his style on a team. Plus, you know, there could have been a hangover from some of the players were I think disappointed that Chicker had lost the job, because they'd enjoyed some success under him. And I mean, I wasn't. I knew Chicker, and I wasn't responsible for him not getting the job. I mean, the board had made a decision that they didn't want to have him as coach, apparently. So that's why they looked around and ended up with myself. But I think there was a bit of a hangover from that early in the piece. Once injuries got out of the road and the team started to settle down a bit, they did start to play some reasonable football, yes.
Well, when Frank Stanton came in 1987, he came in and he brought the broom in. He swept out the club. He came in with his own plays, with his own names for plays, and they became basic, which I'm sure they're still used today, some of the names for the plays. And he came in with the not the iron fist, but a governing rule that wasn't going to be changed. Everybody had to adhere to. So it was very disciplined under Frank. I enjoyed that. I got a lot of confidence being with the guy. He exuded confidence. Obviously, his record in the game was faultless, having coached the touring Kangaroos and so many times. So it was good to be around him, and he came in and he developed the start of the professionalism in the club. You know, video sessions became mandatory. Training was a little bit more intense, and I think, you know, he's got a lot of the credit can be given to him for the success of the 90s, I believe.
Frank I liked a lot. He was a good bloke, but he failed to show that side of himself to the players.
Well, I like Frank socially. I just can't get on with him as far as football's concerned. He was coaching my 82 Kangaroo tour, and he was coaching the State of Origin game I played in 1982, and I just get the impression I got the impression that he didn't like me as a player, and I certainly didn't like him as a coach. And he was a big disciplinarian, you know, like one of those guys. If you smiled, he'd want to know why he was smiling, sort of thing, you know.
His second rower Ian French made the initial break. Mark Cannon loomed in support. Andrew Simons finished off the move, and the Bears led 10-8 at the break. Wolves raced in 3 tries to 1 in the second half, but none brought more delight to Bear Park than when McKinnon celebrated his record with the club with a try in the 28th minute as North chalked up a 28-14 win.
Kokas has probably been their best player all year, but they've made a mistake here in North Sydney. Cannon for the line, and Cannon will score! Cannon has scored for North Sydney, and it's 6-4, and that is the sort of stupid error that Roy Masters has been castigating St George for all week.
Now then, he's back in the game, and he realises it to Stanton.
And there's Funnell's kick. He's put it between Cannon and Lennon, and Cannon again positioned himself well and trying to position Lennon as well to get up and play it 34 metres out from his own line. Now that's Florimo. He's gone straight through. He's up over the halfway. He's got support coming up. This will be a try to North Sydney. Lennon will score, and this will make it 8-all. Lennon's in.
That really was good football, but I hate to say it, there was 2 feeble attempts by the St George players, and I think you'll find it's Young and the hooker Johnston. Beautiful pass. Now watch the switch here. Now we saw Florimo go through and then straight inside. Now watch him look. He'll point, say, come on inside, and there he is. And Lennon goes in for a well-deserved try.
As Norths have the ball on the quarter line and trying to pass them up this time and getting a pass away towards Conlon. Conlon down towards the St George quarter line. The floated pass out wide goes from Simons. Back on the inside, North Sydney continue the movement going through Cannon, and Cannon's held up in tackle number 5. Only 18 metres away. North Sydney's turn to attack through Friend. Friend puts the kick in, and this will be a try. Willett going to the line as Tate. Back on the inside comes Lennon, and Lennon scores. Try.
Out to Florimo. Florimo back on the inside to Teasdale. Teasdale going to pass away there to Lennon. And Lennon's in for the try underneath the post.
My comeback game was against West in 1987, and I injured the knee again, unfortunately. It wasn't sure how great the damage was. The swelling had to go down, and it was perceived that my injury was fine. I had stretched the ligament again, yet I should be fine. But in the off-season of 87-88, playing touch football, I stepped off my leg and snapped it again, and it cost me the majority of the 1988 season. So in 2 seasons I played, I think it was 4 or 6 games.
In the bush, I had a knee reconstruction. North brought me down, I had a knee reconstruction. So there's a lot of rehabilitation involved in 86 and 87. And I found it really tough. I was a little bit homesick, but as I say, I toughed it out, I grinded it out.
The Bears managed to put it together in the dying minutes of the match when replacement player Gary Larson scored in the corner, but the Bears' fight back was all too late. The final scoreline at Penrith Park, Penrith 19, North Sydney 10.
We had some injury tolls, I think, about that time too, and those are sort of things. It's like most sides, as I was saying before. If you can get your top side on the field, you're going to go good. But what we lacked at North Sydney was people coming through, kids to fill people's spots when they got injured, and that always hurt North. But after I'd left, they got themselves really well and truly organised, and they had all the people coming through. And I think we had the Billy Moores at the club at that stage, and Jason Martins and Adrian Tools and those people coming through, and they obviously went on to be great North Sydney players too.
Martin Bellery slipped that away. Wright didn't expect it, of course. Now Brockwell with the ball, and Brockwell's got the ball 10 metres inside Canterbury's territory.
Well, he's another three-quarter that's fitted in quite well, although not with the same success as many of the other players.
And there's Greg Florimo's kick for the touchline, and he's found it 10 metres out from the Canterbury line. They've already tried a few fullbacks, though, this year, North. I think they've had Paul Conlon, John MacArthur, Steve Casey, Mark Cannon, and they've all finished up succumbing to injury. So Dorahy See, the 5th player to play fullback this year. The chance to put the Bears in front. It's high, it's great, it's 2 points. And so North Sydney take an early lead after 5 minutes of play, leading Canterbury Bankstown by 2 points to 0. Done in a dummy half. He'll have to do something good here to redeem himself there. Oh, that wasn't well done. Now that the speculator kick, which could finish up with anyone here. Now chasing the ball through Dora. He's got it first for Norths. Now can he get it back into the field of play? Good tackle, Peter Mortimer. Oh, John Dora, he felt that. 2 of the veterans of Sydney football, and I don't think either of them would mind being tagged that. John Dorahy and Peter Mortimer. Clayton Friend in a dummy half. Comes the short side, that's Dorahy. And Dorahy's gone straight through. Dorahy up over the halfway. Can he get on the outside of Steve Mortimer? He took him well. Mortimer looking at the touch judge saying, didn't that go into touch? It certainly didn't, Stevie, and French has it at the moment for Norths. Not that the touch judge could probably see either, but certainly from this angle it didn't look as if he crossed the touchline.
Well, he didn't, David, and I can't understand how Steve Mortimer could have seen. He was just going through about 84 gallons of water at the time.
Florima kicking for touch. Well, this one find it. Potter's going across there. Potter's got it. Now Potter runs it back. Ducked under the first one, but he's got it just outside the quarter line. Bugden again at dummy half. That's Kelly. He's gone without it. It's picked up by Potter. The referee says play on as Potter's got his pass away. It's gone loose. It's been towed across Philly by Whitfield. Thought he was back playing soccer.
There's a fight on.
There's a blue on the back play, but we'll stick with the football as Whitfield has the ball over on the quarter line. I notice that the touch judge is across there. The 2 touch judges are there as the referee's watching the football as Steve Mortimer goes the blind. It's going to be, well, he's going to hold play up, dummy half. The pass comes away now from Friend. It goes to Philippine. A lovely ball. It's come out wide now. Take it up this time. Tate, the ball's gone loose. Stacks on the mill. It's still anyone's ball. Towed across the in-goal line in the end, or the touch in-goal line by Farah. And the referee's going to put a scrum down for a knock-on. North Sydney with the ball. So it comes away from right at the Friend. That kick coming down towards Peter Mortimer. Oh, Mortimer's missed it. It's loose. Here's a chance for North Sydney. Coming through, Casey trying to tow it into the in-goal area. There's still desperation from all players. It's a try to North Sydney, and it's scored by MacArthur.
It's been, on paper, they've been a great side, but we've all been waiting for the book to become a bestseller, and hopefully it will from this point onwards.
Frank was pretty well disciplined on, you did your job, do it my way, or see you down in reserve grade.
So it was either my way or see up the highway?
That's it, and I was up the highway a bit of the time during all those 3 years.
His reputation preceded him a bit, cranky Frankie, and he didn't let that reputation, he was cranky, but Frank was also, I thought he was a very nice guy. He gave me my chance in 1987. I just suffered a few bad, head injuries in that year, so I didn't play a lot. Then in 1988, that's when I think Frank, I remember one game we're playing over at Belmore Park, we're playing St George actually, and Mark Graham's father died during the week, on the Tuesday of the week, so he flew home to New Zealand for Tuesday, funeral on Thursday, flew back on Friday. We had the game on Saturday. We're down about 18-0 at half-time, and Frank Stanton sat us down in the dressing room after. He just went around each one of them one at a time. He said to Mark, I'll never forget this, Mark, I really appreciate you coming back here under the circumstances, but you may as well have stayed home. And that to me, I just thought, holy dooly.
Yeah, the cranky Frankie tag, I quite wonder where that comes from. I do get a bit intense from time to time, but yeah, we'll leave it at that.
At Brookvale Oval, Manly and North Sydney played a traditionally close match in the local derby. Manly scored the first try after the ball hit a North Sydney player before being regathered by Des Hasler. Michael O'Connor threw the final pass for David Ronson. The game was slipping away from the Bears until 2 tries in the space of only 2 minutes. The second came after John MacArthur charged onto a pass from Clayton Friend, but Manly still led 20-12 at half-time. North Sydney needed a try just after the break, and that's exactly what they got. Ian French was the man who scored the try, and with the conversion, the score was deadlocked at 20-all. The seesawing action continued, with Manly reclaiming the lead after tries by Dale Shearer and replacement winger Jeremy Ticehurst. But the Bears scored 2 more tries before Mark Cannon crossed in the dying seconds for another. The Bears finished with 6 of the 11 tries in defeating the minor premiers 32-30 in a major upset.
In '87, after probably a few years at North, were pretty ordinary. I wasn't enjoying football and wasn't enjoying training, and certainly wasn't playing as good as I had in previous years. And I think everyone just took it for granted that I was retiring, and no one spoke to me about it. I know Frank wasn't going to come up and say, "We want you to play next year," Frank Stanton, and Bob Sullivan never mentioned anything about it. So I thought, oh well, I guess I'm pulling the pin. Anyway, I retired, and I was down the Oaks Hotel one night, or one afternoon, and John Gibbs and Paul Vaughton were there. And I went up and was talking to them, and Paul Vaughton said, "What are you doing next year?" I said, "I'm going to be watching you." And he said, "Would you like to have a run with Manly?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I'll have a run with anyone." And he said, "Well, listen, I'll give Bozo a ring. I'll tell Bozo you're going to ring him." So that's Bob Fulton. So I rang Bob Fulton up, and he said, "Oh yeah." He said, "What are you doing next year?" And I said, "Oh, I think I'm retired." And he said, "Do you want to have a run down here?" I said, "I'd like to get down Manly." And actually, Bob tried to get me to go to East in 1970. After 1979, he tried to get me to sign up with East, but I'd already signed a 3-year contract with North. But anyway, I spoke to Bozo on the phone, and he said, "Come down to training." The first training run, so I went down and trained, and I must admit, I'm the fittest I've ever been in my whole career was when I was with Manly. It was like starting your career over again, and they didn't actually sign me up at the beginning. They got me to play a trial game. I played a trial game against South at Brookvale Oval, and I had a good game, scored a try and stuff. And anyway, they got me in the dressing room, and Doug Daly, the secretary manager at the time, said, "You better come and see me tomorrow." So I went, saw him down at his office at Brookvale near the Leagues Club there, and signed a contract, and it was an incentive contract, and played the year out with the Sea Eagles.
Don Doherty, Joe Cool, he was one of the few people that used to get me for training, especially in my years as I was getting older. He'd always be coming out of training as I was coming in, and he'd say, "No, I'm not training tonight, Mark." And I'd say, "Well, at least I've got my gear out of my bag. Where's yours?" And he'd say, "I'm not even bringing mine in." He said he'd get in to see the case before I could, and he'd call training off. But he was a very gifted player, and although it was late in his career that we combined, he could still play the game.
From 1982 through to 84, we developed the scheme for the Oval. Incidentally, we also had to develop a way of financing it, because you couldn't finance the redevelopment out of rates. The Rugby League wouldn't pay. They did, in fact, in the end, pay $125,000 out of $7 million. But that $7 million had to be raised, and that was raised by the council through a fairly complicated process that didn't involve loans or rates. So that was a massive achievement in itself. Anyway, the redevelopment then happened from about 85 through to 88, and I think everyone was reasonably pleased. But unfortunately, from my point of view, Ken McCaffrey got into some sort of trouble at the club, and he was sacked, and Bob Saunders came along. Well, from that moment on, I'm afraid relations deteriorated, because Bob was just relentless. It didn't matter what concession was given, he wanted more. Because in Bob's mind, I think like many in the club, they still hark back to that view that they wanted a rectangular ground with lighting and rugby league to have total control of the ground. That was their ambition. They constantly drove towards it. So whatever concession was given, they wanted more.
Frank Stanton approached me to go back and coach second grade at North Sydney, and I did that. I had a long association with Frank. He was the coach of Manly, the 78 grand final, the 78 Kangaroo Tour, the 1980 Australian team to New Zealand he was coach of. I was in that. Frank went to Balmain after he coached at Manly, and I ended up at Balmain. So I had a long association with Frank. And I did an apprenticeship in the bush at Tamworth, and then Frank approached me, and I went to North Sydney.
After Newtown were put out of the comp in 1983 and I was the coach, I sort of slipped away from football. I lost interest, and I felt that the game, we'd been cheated by the administration of the game. Anyway, after 5 years I got over that, and I was looking for an avenue to come back. And I approached Frank Stanton if he'd consider having me as a conditioner. At the time I was working at the Newtown Police Citizens Youth Club, and I was highly involved in training of the boys and boxing training and athletics. Previously been at the New South Wales Police Academy, so I had a background in physical training. And Frank thought I had something to offer, and he took me on board.
I do recall I was probably in reserve grade at that time, but they did win 5 of the last 6 games, and I was all hyped up for 1988 was going to be a big year. Then 98, I think with 98 we started off great guns. We were in the top 5 for probably a majority of the season, then on the fringe for a while, and then collapsed the last 4 or 5 games, I think, to miss out in the semis yet again.
Sydney, Dorahy, back it comes, Friend, across it comes Florimer, quickly across from Tony Ray, the grubber kick, here's Bowstead flying, Bowstead picks it up and scores! Vinnie Bowie! Bowstead's back, who said he's lost his speed? Great football, North Sydney, and the Bears lead 6-2. The kick from Foakes comes off one North Sydney player, picked up by Dorahy, and he's going to be forced in the end goal area, and so the line drop out will follow. Oh, what's on here? Someone let one go.
I think it was Langmack. Let one go at Dorahy.
He's almost into the crowd over there. Now, who's got the 10 in the sin bin?
Well, the elbow
Dorahy's got
barely
10
hit
in the
its
sin
mark,
bin.
and I think he's shaking his head, and rightfully so. Lamb was trying to push him over, and he just
there's 3 of them in the sin bin.
Retaliation.
There's 3 in the sin bin. Dorahy, Bella, and Langmack. Penalty's gone to Canterbury in front. Florimer. Away it comes to Jones. Haven't seen much of his attacking skills in this first half. Just outside the quarter line. 3 men in the sin bin at the moment. They've got Bella and Dorahy for North Sydney. That's a good pass. Here's a chance for North. They might only have 11 men, but they're in. And it's the other French this time. Ian French has scored the try. Brett scored 1, and now Ian evens it up. North lead 16-4. Out of the works here. We've made 16 handling errors, Canterbury. And here's Florimo, gone straight through. Greg Florimo, look at the red hairs. Bella go under the post. Thank you.
Been entertained in magnificent manner by the University of Southern California marching band. 86 of them, and that's only the small band. 250 piece normally. Imagine writing the arrangements for them. They're here for World Expo in Brisbane. Friend, Florimo, picking up Hansen. Hansen's gone straight through. Got support from Dorahy, and Dorahy's in to score. The veteran John Dorahy. Today's the day the Teddy Bears have their picnic. Look at that. .33, the State Bank profile says. And if that's what it says, I believe it. Gavin Jones has been replaced, Bill?
Yes, he has, to a rousing reception, and been replaced by number 22, Kevin Maher.
Okay, he's played very strongly, Gavin Jones, today. Now, Dorahy, with his conversion of his own try, again makes no mistake. He's become a point-scoring machine. 30 points to nothing.
Well, we started to play a little bit more consistently and concentrate on the basics a little bit more, and obviously our match condition has...
Andrew Simons. We'll keep it going here, Bill, because the Bears are on the prowl again. Oh, Kevin Maher running onto a pass from Tony Ray has gone in to score, and Frankie's not cranky anymore.
So did it come up with a try?
Now French. Back in field it goes, Simons. Tony Ray should score under the post. That's a good reward.
In '88, we were competitive again at times. It was my last year with the club, and I finished playing for North Sydney at North Sydney Oval on the second to last game of the year against Parramatta, with a game which we won. And, it was a nice way to go out.
We actually won a good few games, and we just missed out on the playoffs. It came down to the last game, actually, and I think we actually won, but we were relying on another team to get beaten. They didn't, and we missed out. But it was, North Sydney had a lot of, what would you say, older players at the club. And it was a little tough because I was handling older players that were disgruntled, I guess, not being in first grade. It didn't concern me that much whether they were coming back for first grade or not. I can remember at one time that a player came back from first grade and I really didn't want to pick him, and Frank said, well, you know, you've got to pick the guy. So I did, and I said to Frank, you know, that if he doesn't aim up, he's off at half time, you know. So he went off at half time. So, yeah, that's what we did.
In the year 1988, we had an under-21 side at North Sydney, and there was an amazing group of young footballers who were in that group. We had David Fairley, Jason Martin, Billy Moore, Wayne DeCarter and David Hall. Even though they weren't successful as a team, I believe that they were some of the finest young footballers playing the game. And I recall at one stage I reported to a newspaper columnist, Peter Peters, and I said, there's 3 guys in this side who play first grade. Well, I was wrong, there were 6. And they were the backbone of North Sydney for years to come.
7 boys, all named McKinnon, so there's a legacy across all his grandkids. But his legacy is obviously a walk in the North Sleeves Club, and see his name on the board there, president for 29 years or whatever he was, life member of North Sleeves Club, North Football Club, North Sydney Rugby League Country Club at Narellan, and also the New South Wales Rugby League. And I've got to say, he's the most well-liked guy I've ever known in my life.
Come the off-season, we were playing all these games at training and skill drills and etc. And I was going in a little bit hard in the defensive drills. And Frank Stan called me up. He said, "Oh, do you want to play in the forwards?" And so that's where my career began, in the forwards. And so I have Frank to thank for that. Frank was known as Cranky Frankie, and he got very cranky when, you know, instead of saying having 45 minutes at a training session, you could end up an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours at a training session, just going over and over things. And that goes for any coach.
In 1989, we had a good year the previous year. We developed with some of those young guys, and we just went on with it. And we went through the season, and I just can't remember. I think we ran, you know, in the first, or up the top somewhere, and we just sort of kicked on, and those players developed, and they got better and better. They were a year more matured, and again we had those couple of older guys, Mark Kennan probably in particular, that really steered the ship around. And when we got to the playoffs, we were just on fire.
And Wiz come with new ideas, and he also brought a freshness, because the Wiz is sort of he was a happy little personality at the time, and with the young players we had coming into the reserve grade, Wiz did a wonderful job, and they went on to win the comp that year. And yeah, Wiz, like a lot of people that stay in coaching, they get a little cranky as the time goes by.
No, I worked all the time I was employed. I was employed elsewhere. I only did it on a part-time basis.
And I think had Frank been able to devote full resources and being a full-time coach, then I think that he would have achieved a lot of greatness with the sides. Unfortunately, it wasn't to be, because there was only 2 or 3 clubs that had full-time coaches, and the clubs in those days didn't see the value in full-time coaches.
Well, Mark Graham was probably one of the better players I coached at North. Obviously, he was at the end of his career, but his abilities were well documented, and his influence on the team was immense, and he was had a real presence about him, and I think that he'll eventually one day be a good coach.
I'd say I was most probably the worst captain that ever drew breath, just quietly. I don't think it was much fun to be around if we were losing and things weren't going our way. I was certainly not a calming influence on anybody. I'd tell people exactly what I thought, and on a number of occasions I can actually ask and remember telling people to come out the back and we'll sort it out after a game because I wasn't pleased with the way they'd played.
Did some of them take up the offer?
I was stopped a few times from taking some people outside, but yeah, I was very volatile as a captain, and if someone did something wrong, I think I'd most probably spend the next 5 minutes in the game abusing them rather than cajoling them into doing what they should be doing.
Guys that I really took note of were those guys who put in the full effort at training. Guys like John MacArthur. There was a guy called Greg Lennon. John MacArthur and Greg Lennon always used to try and outdo each other at training. No, fitness fanatics. And probably didn't get a lot of recognition, but they were really fit. And I think that's a little bit of that rubbed off onto me, and I went away and I tried to work hard on the fitness. And I think also that's how I've stayed in the game so long.
1989 was a year of great hope for the Bears. We made a lot of significant signings at the time. The Gale brothers, I think, came on board. We actually went through a very rigorous off-season program. We went to a camp. I remember this camp called Soldier One in the back of Windsor, and it was one of the most gruelling weeks I've ever had in terms of pre-season training. Yeah, it was all there for a purpose. And 1989, the season was going to be made or broken in the first game of the season, and that was against Balmain. And I think there was I wouldn't say an error, but one of the things that we did, we built up too much the import of getting that first game and winning it against Balmain, and we played a cracker of a game. It was a fantastic game. Balmain, I think Wayne Pearce wasn't in the team at that stage. He was missing from the team, and we had this chance to win this game, and it was going to launch our season. And I think that was a mistake in itself to actually say, our first game of the year, we're going to launch from this first game. And when we didn't win it, Balmain, who I think went to the grand final that year, came back and they beat us in that game, and it seemed to just knock the wind out of our sails. And in hindsight, looking back at it, it was a crucial game because I remember the feeling in the dressing room. I remember Frank Stanton's feelings of just disbelief and truth. We failed in a way, and it seemed to affect how the year went from there. It's like if we didn't get that first game, it wasn't going to happen.
In Lane Cove today, the last survivor of North Sydney's 1921 and 22 premiership side celebrated his 90th birthday. Hooray! And Herman Peters got just the present he wanted, with Greg Florimo setting up John MacArthur for the Bears' first try. In front of 14,000 fans, the Bears turned it on, scoring 4 tries and playing the sort of football to make old Herman's day.
In the late 80s, I'd formed a group of like-minded people called Bib Club, which was Bears in Business, and it was with Dennis Cubis, myself, Michael Richmond, who was the club doctor, Phil Davis, who worked at Channel 7 and played lower grades with Norse, Peter Harrison, who was a former North Sydney player, and John Gray. And our attitude was to be able to support North Sydney in a non-violent guerrilla tactic attitude. In other words, we wouldn't interfere with the going on at the club, but we'd help raise funds and try and give a professional attitude, again the business related, to make it like a business rather than just a bit of a social time. And we worked pretty tirelessly over a couple of years and trying to bring changes about. Wasn't to be, because it was fairly much a territorial protectionist attitude by the North Sydney Committee at that stage. So out of it, I was, involved on the sideline, and I had a call to see if I would be interested in getting involved in the committee, on which I said no. I mean, when you're a player, you realise that the committees are all hopeless. And now that I'm a committee man, I realise that all players are hopeless. So I didn't really have too much excitement about going to become a committee man. However, I've got to say the person who really convinced me was Brian Chicken Norton, a great player, great coach, and a very dear friend of mine. He said, "You've got to make the effort and put it in," and so I came on board with the David Hill ticket.
I had a guy that we bought from Tamworth, Gary Maguire. He played in 2 premiership winning teams in Tamworth. He ended up captain of the reserve grade team in 1989. And we had Mark Cannon. We had those couple of guys. And they knew how to win. And the kids, they grew in confidence as we went on. And they learnt the right way from day one.
Thank you very much, Graham Hughes. And yes, the North Sydney Bears getting a tremendous reception here at the Sydney Football Stadium. As Graham mentioned, chasing their first premiership since 1959. For their opponents today, the Parramatta side, they won their last back in 1979. And joining me, a very popular EL, Peter Sterling. Peter, that was just before that magic run of 3 premierships in the first grade side of Parramatta territory.
Yes, that's right. And let's hope that we can get back to those days once again. The seconds have had a big year, finished minor premiers. Faltered a little bit a couple of weeks ago against the North Sydney side, but hopefully we can turn that around today.
Well, joining us on the touchline is Andrew Ettinghausen, and Andrew, it could be a swan song for a few of these Parramatta greats of the past.
Yeah, that's right. There's some great players out here today, and I think Parramatta are going to go into the game favourites. They've got a lot of experienced players. I think it should be a very tight game, but I think Parramatta might just get there.
Well, they'd have to go against the trend because against North Sydney this year, this Parramatta side you can see on screen at the moment has been defeated. And what a moment today for Mick Stone, disappointed not to get the first grade game after backing up in 86, 87 and 89 as the first grade referee for the Winfield Cup Grand Final. But it will be North Sydney who will defend the northern end of the Sydney Football Stadium. And of course they finished in 3rd position and suffered only 7 losses throughout the year. 2 to Manly, 2 to Brisbane, Illawarra, Gold Coast and Cronulla. So in front of about 2/3 capacity of the Sydney Football Stadium at the moment, building for the big one this afternoon. Referee Mick Stone blows time on, and Conlon gets the ball underway, kicking it deep down in towards the Parramatta territory. It's picked up by Krankovic on that far side, and he takes the first tackle of this reserve grade grand final for 89. There's Jackson. And Jackson works it out about 8 metres out for the Parramatta goal line. Stadium, a chance for a conversion, and Conlon has kicked it from touch, and what a marvellous try it was. Watch for the great play by the centre three-quarter and captain Maguire. He starts it and finishes it.
Well, he didn't really start. I thought the great ball from Cannon put him away, and magnificent run down the sideline here. Saw the ball come back in, a little bit fortuitous, the bounce, but I figure in this game you make your own luck. And Gary Maguire had backed up the North's captain to cross over for a pretty important try to run in the first one of this game.
Great work by North. They've had to withstand a hell of a lot of pressure down in their own line, and we can see there the ball moving wide. That usually happens, and it's not uncommon to see that after a team's withstood a lot of pressure, they end up running in a full length of the field try as the other team loses a bit of concentration. But a great try.
Well, the bounce did favour Maguire as it came back infield from Conlon. Conlon banged over a magnificent conversion. The 21-year-old, the former captain of the New South Wales country, New South Wales and Australian schoolboy side. Conlon nearly through the gap.
And just talking about the halfback there, at dummy half, I'm sure that they're grooming him for the first grade spot next year. An exciting player, and I think he's got first grade written all over him.
Yes, he had a great major semi-final here a few weeks ago. There's Big Alexander. Sydney, centre field, moving the ball. Soden again with the wraparound. McPhail couldn't take it forward. Interesting story with the coaches today. Steve Martin, of course, goes on to coach the first grade side at Bear Park next year, and the man coaching Parramatta, Peter Louis, goes as his offsider.
That's right, yes. Peter's been at the Parramatta Club for a number of years now, and we'll be sorry to see him go. Doesn't have that many aspirations to coach first grade, but I'm sure that he'll do a great job at North Sydney, as he has done for the Eels over a number of years. The decision was certainly well justified.
Well, what a great player he's been for the Code. With East Manly, with Hull Kingston Rovers, Queensland and Australia. 25 tests for his country. Kerry Bowstead, and still going strong on the right wing in reserve grade for North Sydney. So the Bears set inside the quarter line, deep in attack to the left. It goes to Soden, holding it back now. So North Sydney set at centre field. McPhail a dummy half, dummies to Alexander. This time coming up with it was Fairley, the second row forward. Very slow to his feet. 12 metres out. Parramatta down to 12 men. Soden. Tremendous bit of defence that time from Darren Smith. Final tackle now for the Bears. It goes to Cannon. The attempted drop goal. Mickstone says it looks okay. So Mark Cannon, his third field goal of the year by North Sydney. Adrian Toole, the replacement forward, was the man that led the charge in defence. So the Eels camped inside their own quarter. And around about 15 minutes of play remains in this reserve grade grand final. As Taylor kept it alive beautifully. Here's a good break upfield by Krenkovic to the halfway line. Support. Here's a chance for the Eels. Jason Bell got it away. And it's going to be Lydian that scores a magnificent Parramatta try. Wrapped up by Casato. Now it goes. Soden put it high in the air. It'll come down on the quarter line. Tysos flew high and knocked it on. It's a North Sydney ball with 6 to go. Fairley got it away. Here's a chance. But just short of the line is Egan. And that's a penalty. At the end of this match, we'll be awarding the State Bank Man of the Match Award, $750. And they have been great supporters of rugby league in 1989, the State Bank. Now North Sydney. Kevin Maher settles at 10 metres out. McPhail for Alexander. Switched it again. Good play by North Sydney. Fairley did well. Is this a North Sydney try? Yes, it is. Kerry Bowstead celebrates finally a premiership in Sydney.
I mean, he's still the same bloke who came down from his father's
Yeah, he's one of the great little champions, Peter. He's a great character and has been a tremendous credit to the game of rugby league. And I suppose when he came down, he probably wouldn't have thought he was going to end up in a reserve grade grand final, because he served the first grade sides of East Manly and also Hull Kingston Rovers in the United Kingdom with great distinction. The countdown, 15 seconds away, North Sydney, from their first premiership title in 30 years. And the crowd is counting it down. Wait for the hooter. North Sydney are the rugby league champions in reserve grade in '89. It's a history-making day at the Sydney Football Stadium.
They're not very happy about it, are they, David?
Well, they came out of third position. They have defeated the minor premiers for the 4th time this year. Go the Bears.
All right, the North Sydney side now doing their lap of honour for a great victory. Their coach, Steve Martin, and an important year for him next year as they hold the cup aloft to show the fans.
I can remember it was a big day back at the club. It was unbelievable at North Sydney. You know, you'd think they'd won everything that night, but you know, it was good. And as I say, those players developed and they experienced the good side of things, and they were educated that way, and the experiences that they gained through those couple of years took them on further.
My contract was up, and you know, I would, as I said prior to that, I was probably looking for a rest at the end of my term at Balmain, but because it was North, I did take the job. But you know, at the end of my 3-year contract, North decided that they wanted to go in a different direction, and that was okay. Yeah.
The first year I was at North Sydney, Bob Sullivan was the president, and the following year, David Hill come onto the scene. David was not a member of the football club for 3 years, so they had to call a special meeting for David to be eligible to run as president of the football club. So Michael Segredo, who intended to run against him, could have stopped because David had to get 75% of the vote, and Michael had enough votes to stop that from happening. But Michael's belief was that, as a true football club member of North Sydney, he thought the members should decide who they wanted to be their president. So Michael didn't get his voters to come in and vote against David at that meeting. And eventually, Michael did run against David Hill, and David Hill was successful.
Well, the first thought, we'd just won this second grade competition in '89. It's the first comp we'd won in 30 odd years. The Leeds Club had gone from 700,000 to $2.5 million in profit, and I'd been president for 3 or 4 years. So I felt as though the thing was just starting to move along a bit. We had a great lot of young players coming into the club, which was the policy we started when I first became president, and things looked like they were going to be on the move. The thing that most really brought about it was when we didn't re-sign Chicker Norton as the first grade coach. This is in my own opinion. He was hurt by that, and I can blame him for that because I was a coach and I got exactly the same treatment and I was hurt at the time. But we had an opportunity to bring Frank Stanton into the club, and with the young players that we had at the club, it was the opinion of the committee and myself that Frank Stanton would be the guy for the job, in preference to Chicker, who was perhaps a little bit like myself, a loyal guy to the club, a fellow that got on well with the players. But we felt, you know, once again, I might have related it back to the time that I was playing, you know, that we just needed that extra little bit. Frank had been a Kangaroo Tour coach and a good coach and an established sort of man in the football world, and we thought that would be the answer. Nothing detrimental to Chicker at all at the time, because I think Chicker and I are still friends. He's mostly hurt because he didn't get the job. I can't blame him for that. But I think that's what brought David Hill to the club, in my own opinion. They could tell you something different, but that's the way I felt about it. I don't think I deserved to be sacked at the time. But, you know, it was obvious at the special meeting we had when David Hill got the permission to continue, because he hadn't been in the club, to stand for president. That hurt a little bit, to be honest with you, because I don't think I deserved that. I'd done nothing wrong other than the fact that there was a hassle about Brian Norton not getting the first grade coaching job. To me, that's how I felt it anyhow.
But people wanted instant success, and that can be good, that can be bad. You know, you can get instant success sometimes, and other times you can't. So people saw the changing of the guard again as what was required. And I've got to say that to David Hill's credit, David did a lot of very, very good things for the club. One thing I think he brought to the club was confidence.
I think everybody would like to see Norths do well. It's one of those clubs where everybody likes to knock Norths, but I think everybody would like to see it do well. It won the reserve grade premiership last year. It's the first pennant for 30 years. It's got a good young squad, a very good young coach, now first grade, who coached that second grade side. It's got extraordinarily loyal supporters. It's not that short of money because it's got the league licence club over there which pumps a lot of money into it. We've got a first board meeting tonight, and there are about 9 major areas I think we've got to look at. But the truth is nobody has a magic wand. And it's going to be a very difficult task turning things around. The other thing is, if you take a major professional football club like North Sydney, the budgets have all been allocated or spent, all known sources of revenue been identified, the squad's largely been picked, the management's been picked, the coaches are picked. So there's not a great deal of flexibility for 1990. Nevertheless,
as a result of, it wasn't just me, there was a clean sweep of new board last night. There's now a very high expectation that we're going to have to do something next year. We came second last in this season just gone, and I think there's a very high expectation to put points on the board next year.
Good. David Hill, who's Managing Director of the ABC and the leader now of the North Sydney Bears, talking to me on the Andrew Ollie Show.
I think the late 70s and early 80s, the football and the Australian community virtually mirrored each other. That in the 60s and 70s, football was, you know, a lot of social, beer drinking and knockabout, blue-collar type game. And I think probably the Australian public was the same. And the end of the 70s and the beginning of the 80s, football started becoming more professional. More money, more opportunities. I think that was the same with society generally, that the beginning of the 80s brought with it opportunities, and at the end of the 80s, by that time you had the high flyers who were spending billions of dollars, and the Christopher Skase and Alan Bonds. But I think that the football and society kind of mirrored each other. As society got more sophisticated, I think football did as well.
There was this talk about a Brisbane team coming in, and thankfully it did come in my opinion. The Broncos was essential. It did sound a death knell for the Brisbane competition in a certain sense, yet it was, I think it was slowly getting there anyway.
I was quite looking forward to the game expanding, but in a controlled manner, because, you know, we really need the game to expand, and but it has expanded to a large extent, but it's at what cost, and I think we'll be measuring that cost for quite a period from here on.
Came down, I'd never really been out of my hometown, and I came to North Sydney, and I think for 3 weeks I never left the house really. It was just a big shock to my system, but it was great to be here, and I knew I was, as much as it was a shock to be out of Wallingarra, I just felt at home very quickly. I knew I was in the right place. 89 was a great year for me, because I started in 21s. I was only 17. I went through, played reserve grade, played some first grade, made my debut in first grade at 17. Dropped back into reserve grade and won the grand final with Steve Martin. I think that was North's first premiership in 30 years. And I remember after winning the game, we went back to the Sydney Creek ground to get changed, and we're obviously going to go out and celebrate. And we were screaming and everyone was shouting, and I remember saying over the top of everyone else, get used to this feeling, because we're going to be winners from now on.
Determined, and we just don't care who we play or who we maul.